the girl no one wanted. The rain fell hard over the human colony on the red moon. Cold winds blew through the metal streets, carrying the smell of dust and storm. Inside a steel cage near the research base, a small alien girl sat alone. Her hair was tangled like silver wires, her eyes shining faint blue in the dark. People called her the Wild One. They said she was dangerous, that she attacked soldiers when they tried to catch her. No one wanted to go near her. Not even the scientists who had captured her months ago. They said she was half beast, half machine, born in the ruins of an alien war. But Captain Elias Ward didn't believe that. He had seen her face when she was brought in. She looked more scared than wild, more lost than angry. He was a soldier who had fought in too many wars. He had learned to see the difference between hate and fear. And what he saw in her eyes was not hate. It was pain. Every night, when the base lights dimmed, Elias would walk past her cell. He told himself he was just checking security, but that was not the truth. Something about her made him stop every time. She would sit quietly, watching the stars through the fence. Sometimes she whispered in her own language. A soft, sad sound, like someone singing to remember a home that no longer existed. One night, during a heavy storm, he heard her hum again. It was a strange melody, full of sorrow. Elias stopped, listening. He didn't understand the words, but he felt something inside his chest tighten. The girl looked up and saw him standing there. For a long moment, they just looked at each other through the energy bars. She didn't move, she didn't speak. Her eyes were full of something human, something pleading. Then she slowly lifted her hand and pressed it against the invisible barrier. Elias hesitated, but his hand moved by itself. He placed his palm on the other side of the field. A soft crackle of energy passed between them. But in that brief touch, something changed. It was as if she was telling him, "I'm not what they think I am." The next morning, the head scientist came with a group of guards. They said the alien was to be moved to the underground lab. Officially, it was for final testing. But everyone knew what that meant. Disposal. Elias tried to argue, but his superior cut him off. "She's too dangerous," the man said. "Orders from high command." Elias felt anger rise in him. He wanted to shout that she was just a child. But he was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. When they took her from the cage, she fought. Not out of fury, but out of terror. Her voice echoed through the corridors, a cry so full of fear that even the guards hesitated. Elias turned away, unable to watch. But her voice followed him. "Please," she said in broken English, "don't let them." He froze. She could speak. She understood. His heart pounded as he realized. She wasn't some mindless alien. She was intelligent, sentient, maybe even innocent. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The sound of her voice kept replaying in his mind. He had been part of the war that wiped out her kind. He had followed orders then too. Now, looking back, he wondered how many lives had been lost because men like him never questioned. Outside, thunder rolled, and red lightning split the sky. Then the alarms began to scream. Emergency lights flashed, the power grid went down. Someone shouted that the containment cells had been breached. Elias grabbed his weapon and ran to the lab. But when he arrived, the cell was empty. The door broken open, and blood, bright silver blood, marked the floor, leading out toward the storm. He ran to the gate and saw a small figure in the distance, stumbling through the rain. It was her, the Wild One, trying to escape. The guards were preparing to fire. Elias didn't think. He shouted for them to hold fire and sprinted into the storm. His boots sank in the mud, wind cutting through his armor. He saw her fall near the rocks and rushed to her side. She looked up, eyes wide with fear. When she saw him, she tried to crawl away, but he held out his hands, showing he had no weapon. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." She hesitated, trembling. Her voice cracked. "You save?" He nodded, and without another word, he lifted her in his arms. Behind them, the base lights were flickering back on. Soon the soldiers would come. If he went back now, he'd be court-martialed, maybe executed for treason. But if he ran, he could save her, and maybe himself. He looked down at the girl, her breathing weak, her skin glowing faint blue under the rain. Something deep inside him whispered that she wasn't the end of humanity's story. She was the beginning of something new. Elias turned toward the endless desert and started walking. The storm held around them, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something truly right. He didn't know where they were going. He didn't know if they would survive, but he knew one thing. He would not let her die. Not tonight, not ever. The escape through the red desert. The desert stretched endless beneath two dying suns. Red sand whipped across Elias's face as he carried the alien girl through the storm. Each step sank deep, every gust of wind biting his skin like shards of glass. The girl was light in his arms, far too light. Her breathing came in weak gasps, her skin glowing faintly blue with every heartbeat. He had wrapped her in his torn jacket, trying to keep the cold away. But the wind was merciless. Behind them, the colony lights were fading. He knew once the storm cleared, drones would come searching. They would track his ID chip, follow his footprints, and maybe kill them both. Still, he didn't stop. He didn't care about orders anymore. He only cared about the strange, fragile being in his arms, the one they had called Wild. By nightfall, he found a small cave carved into black rock. The entrance was narrow, hidden by twisted plants that glowed faintly in the dark. He ducked inside, breathing heavily. The silence felt heavy, filled only by the sound of the wind outside and the girl's shallow breathing. He laid her gently on the ground. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faint in the dim light. She looked at him, confused, afraid, but alive. Elias removed his helmet, his face covered in dust and sweat. He smiled weakly. "You're safe here." She didn't answer, just watched him quietly. He took out a small medkit, shaking hands trying to clean her wound. The blood shimmered like liquid light, glowing softly on his fingers. When the antiseptic touched her skin, she winced. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm helping." She stared at him for a moment, then whispered a single word in broken English. "Why?" Elias paused, unsure how to answer. "Because I couldn't let them kill you," he thought. "Because you looked at me like you knew me. Because something about you feels right." But he simply said, "You didn't deserve to die." For a long time, she said nothing. Then she reached out slowly and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling. Her eyes filled with something human. Trust. She whispered, "They fear me." Elias nodded. "Yes, they do." Her gaze turned distant, her voice low. "I fear me too." Outside, thunder rolled again. Elias leaned back against the cave wall, exhaustion hitting him hard. He closed his eyes for a moment, but his mind wouldn't rest. What had they done to her? Why had Command wanted her gone so badly? He remembered hearing rumors about alien children captured after the war, used for experiments. About soldiers ordered to destroy what they didn't understand. Was she one of them? And if so, what was she becoming? When he woke, the storm had passed. The cave was quiet, the air clear. He turned to check on her, but she was gone. His heart raced as he grabbed his blaster and ran outside. The red dunes were glowing under the rising suns. And then he saw her, standing barefoot on the ridge, staring at the sky. Light shimmered around her like mist. Tiny shapes floated near her, drones, but not human ones. Alien technology, small and alive, orbiting her gently like fireflies. Elias froze, watching. She wasn't controlling them. They were responding to her. When she turned and saw him, the light vanished. The small drones dropped like stones into the sand. Her eyes were wide with fear. "You saw." Elias nodded slowly. "What are you?" She looked down. "I don't know. They make me. They hurt me. But something inside still lives." Her words came broken, but the meaning was clear. She wasn't just an alien. She was something new. Part human experiment, part lost creation. A weapon they built but couldn't control. And now, she was free. Elias felt the weight of it sink in. If Command found her again, they would tear her apart to study what she was. He stepped closer, lowering his weapon. "I don't care what they made you," he said softly. "You're alive. That's what matters." Her eyes shimmered, confusion and warmth mixing like sunrise on glass. "You protect," she whispered. He smiled. "As long as I breathe." For the first time, she smiled back, small and trembling. And in that moment, Elias realized he had crossed the line completely. He was no longer just a soldier. He had become something else. Her guardian, her shield against a world that wanted her destroyed. The suns climbed higher, painting the desert gold. Far in the distance, he could see shapes moving, search crafts cutting through the sky. They were coming. He turned to her. "We have to move." She nodded and reached for his hand. Her fingers tightened around his. The contact sent a faint pulse of blue light between them. He felt warmth spread through his arm, like electricity mixed with heartbeat. Whatever she was, their connection was real now. And deep inside, Elias knew they were no longer running away. They were running toward something. Something far greater than either of them could imagine. The city beneath the sand. The desert ended where the bones of a lost city began. Broken towers leaned under the burning twin suns, their surfaces half buried in red sand. Elias stood on the ridge beside the alien girl, staring down at the ruins. "This was your home?" he asked softly. She nodded, her eyes glowing faint blue as the wind lifted her silver hair. "My people lived here, long ago," she whispered. "Before the war, before humans came." Her voice carried a sadness that pierced the air like a memory too heavy to hold. They walked slowly through the ruins. The ground was cracked and uneven, littered with pieces of metal and bone. Strange carvings glowed faintly on the fallen walls, pulsing with the same light that ran under her skin. Elias reached out to touch one. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the symbols flared alive. Light surged across the ruins, and a low hum filled the air. The girl stepped closer, her eyes wide. "They remember me," she whispered. A holographic projection flickered to life before them. A tall alien figure, robed in light, speaking in a language Elias didn't know. The girl understood, her face pale. "It says, 'The seed lives,'" she murmured. Elias frowned. "What seed?" She looked down, hesitant. "I think me." Before he could ask, a faint beep came from his wrist pad. An alert. The colony drones were near. He turned to the horizon and saw dark shapes moving fast. "We have to go now," he said sharply. But the girl shook her head. "No, they must know the truth." She pressed her hand to one of the glowing walls. The ground trembled, dust falling from the ceilings as ancient doors began to shift open. A staircase spiraled down into the darkness below. Elias hesitated, but when the sound of approaching engines filled the sky, he followed her down. The air grew cooler, the light dimmer, until the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. In the center stood a massive structure, like a heart made of glass and metal, pulsing with blue light. The girl walked toward it, drawn like a magnet. Elias followed, his pulse quickening. When she touched the structure, it responded. Veins of light spread across the walls. The floor vibrated as energy surged upward, forming images in the air. He saw the past, planets burning, fleets of ships, soldiers in silver armor, and humans among them. The war. But then he saw something else, a lab, human scientists working on alien DNA, and a child being created in a chamber of light. Her. Elias stepped back, his breath caught. "You're not just from them," he whispered. "You're part of us." She turned, her voice trembling. "They made me from both. They wanted peace. They wanted a bridge, but then they grew afraid." Tears formed in her silver eyes. "They destroyed everyone who knew. They tried to end me too." Elias felt a chill spread through him. The mission reports, the orders, the secrecy, it all made sense now. She was living proof of what both sides had done. A symbol too dangerous to exist. The hum of engines grew louder above, dust falling from the roof as the colony crafts descended. Elias grabbed her hand. "We have to move. They'll bury this place." But she didn't move, her gaze fixed on the glowing heart. "I can wake it," she whispered. "It can protect us." Elias looked around, unsure. "What is it?" "A guardian," she said simply, "from before your kind ever came." Before he could stop her, she stepped into the light. The structure responded like a living thing, wrapping tendrils of energy around her. Her body lifted from the ground, her hair floating like silver fire. Elias shouted her name, though he didn't even know if she had one. The chamber blazed with light, and from beneath the earth, the city began to stir. The sands above exploded upward as metallic shapes rose from the ruins, ancient machines awakening after centuries of silence. The colony ships swerved, alarms blaring as beams of blue light shot into the sky. Elias shielded his face, shouting over the noise. "What are you doing?" Her voice echoed through the chamber, layered, powerful, calling home. And then, silence. The machines froze, the light dimmed, and she collapsed. Elias rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Her body was cold, the glow fading from her skin. Stay with me, he whispered, panic rising in his chest. Her lips moved faintly. They are coming. Who? He asked. Her eyes opened just enough for him to see the reflection of stars in them. My kind, she breathed, the old kind. Above them, the sky turned dark as something massive moved beyond the clouds. Not human ships, not anything Elias had ever seen. And as the ground shook under his feet, he realized that saving her hadn't just changed his life. It had awakened something far greater, something the galaxy had long forgotten. The awakening. The ground trembled beneath Elias's feet. The air was alive with static, charged with power that felt ancient and alive. Above the ruins, the sky had turned dark, not from clouds, but from something vast moving behind them. The alien girl lay motionless in his arms, her skin dimming from blue to pale silver. Her body was light as air, fragile, like something not meant for this world. Elias looked up, and what he saw made his heart stop. A colossal shape emerged from the clouds, a ship, but not human. It was made of living metal, flowing and breathing like a creature. Its surface shimmered like moonlight on water. The sound it made was not mechanical. It was a low hum, almost like a song. The ancient machines in the ruins below responded to it. Their lights pulsed in rhythm, as if answering a call from the stars. Elias held her close, whispering, "You did this." Her eyes fluttered open weakly. "They heard me," she breathed. "They never forgot." The words sent chills through him. He looked to the horizon and saw flashes of light. Human ships racing toward the ruins. The colony had detected the signal, and now they were coming. Armed, afraid, desperate to contain what they didn't understand. Elias knew what would happen next. Command would label it a threat. They would fire before asking questions. They always did. He checked his rifle, but it felt useless now. What could one man do between two civilizations? He turned back to the girl. Her gaze was far away, her voice faint. "They think I am their child." "Are you?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "I am made of both worlds." The alien ship hovered lower, its light bathing the desert in silver and blue. Symbols ran across its hull, the same patterns he had seen glowing under her skin. A beam of soft light descended, washing over them both. Elias raised his hand to shield his eyes, but the light wasn't hot. It was warm, gentle, and he felt something inside him shift. His thoughts slowed, his heartbeat calmed. He could hear voices, faint and layered, speaking in the same tone as her song. The light wrapped around her, lifting her slightly from his arms. He tried to hold on, but it was like holding mist. "Wait," he shouted, "she's not ready." The ship's hum grew louder. She reached out her hand to him, her voice trembling. "Come with me." For a heartbeat, Elias almost did. But then he saw the human fighters approaching, dark dots growing larger in the sky. The desert filled with the sound of engines. Missiles armed, lasers charged. "Don't shoot," Elias yelled into his calm. But the only response was static. A moment later, the first missile fired. The sky erupted. The blast struck near the ruins, throwing sand and fire in every direction. Elias shielded her body as debris rained down. The alien ship rose higher, its hum changing tone, no longer a song, but a warning. Blue light flashed across its surface, and a wave of energy expanded outward. The human ships froze mid-air, their weapons dead, their engines silent. Elias could only stare as the massive craft moved slowly between the two forces, human and alien, like a wall of light. Then, from the ship's surface, shapes began to descend, tall, slender beings of light. Their forms were graceful, shifting between solid and transparent. One of them knelt beside the girl, touching her forehead. A glow passed between them. She gasped softly and opened her eyes fully. Her voice was different now, clear, calm, powerful. "They are my kin," she whispered, "but they are not what they were." The being looked at Elias. Though it had no clear face, he felt its gaze pierce his soul. A voice entered his mind, not spoken but felt. "You saved her," it said, "when your kind would have destroyed her." Elias's throat tightened. "I didn't save her for orders," he said. "I saved her because she deserved to live." The being nodded slowly. "She carries what both our races lost. Hope." Above them, the human command ship circled, its captain screaming for answers. Sensors overloaded, communications jammed, weapons offline. No one could understand what was happening. And in that chaos, Elias realized something. This was not a battle. It was a test. The alien girl stood now, fully awake, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. She turned to Elias, her voice steady. They want to take me with them. He looked at her, pain flickering across his face. Will you go? She reached out and touched his hand. I don't belong to one world anymore, she said. But if I go, maybe the war will finally end. Elias swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her to stay, to fight, to live beside him. But deep down he knew she was right. The alien beings surrounded her, the ship's light growing stronger. As the beam lifted her toward the sky, Elias felt his chest tighten. She looked down at him one last time and whispered, I will come back when they are ready to understand. And then she was gone. The light faded. The ship rose higher, until it became nothing more than a star among others. Elias stood alone among the ruins, the sand quiet again. The war hadn't ended, but something greater had begun. The story of the wild one, the girl no one wanted, had become a legend written across two worlds. And one human had stood at the center of it, not as a soldier, but as a believer. The mark she left behind. The ruins were silent again. The desert wind carried away the dust, the echoes, the light, everything. Elias stood where the alien ship had vanished, the sand still warm under his boots. He had no words, no orders, no mission now, just the hollow feeling that something far greater had touched him, and then left. Hours later, human recovery teams arrived. They found him sitting among the broken stones, staring at the sky. Weapons pointed, voices shouting. But Elias didn't resist. He just raised his hands and said quietly, It's over. They took him back to the colony in restraints. His uniform torn, his rank stripped. The officers questioned him for days. Endless interrogation, bright lights, cold rooms. What did you see? They demanded. What did she do? Elias said nothing. They wouldn't believe him anyway. How could he explain that the girl they feared had saved them all? Weeks passed. The official report called it a failed containment incident. They said the alien weapon self-destructed. That Captain Elias Ward went missing in action, presumed dead. The truth was buried under classified codes and sealed orders. But rumors spread. Whispers in the barracks, in the mining colonies, among pilots and engineers. Stories of a soldier who defied command to protect a creature from another world. A creature that vanished into light. Elias was sent to a remote outpost on the edge of human space. No one spoke to him. No one asked questions. He was a ghost in his own army. Every night, he would stand outside his quarters and look at the stars, searching for that one faint blue light that had once answered her song. He wondered if she remembered him. He wondered if she ever would come back. Then one night, something strange happened. While patrolling near the communication towers, he noticed a flicker in the sand. A glow, soft, silver, pulsing gently. He knelt down, brushing the dust away. There, half buried, was a small shard of crystal. It was warm to the touch, glowing faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. He turned it over in his hand. And then he heard it, a sound, not through his ears, but in his mind. A soft whisper, familiar and distant. Elias. He froze, his breath catching. It was her voice, gentle and real. I kept my promise, she whispered. I left something behind. The crystal brightened, showing faint images. Her face, the alien ruins, the ancient ship. Then words appeared inside his thoughts. The seed lives. Elias realized what it meant. She had awakened the old technology not to destroy, but to plant. Something was growing beneath the surface, a connection between human and alien life, a living bridge between two worlds, and she had chosen him to guard it. Over the next weeks, strange things began to happen near the outpost. Machines started working without power. Desert plants began to glow faintly at night, and the soldiers spoke of hearing faint music carried by the wind. They called it interference. Elias knew better. It was her presence spreading quietly across the sands. He started building small transmitters from scraps, each one tuned to the same strange frequency as the crystal. And when he activated them, a pattern formed, symbols glowing in the air, the same patterns that had once appeared on the ruins. He mapped them out carefully and realized they formed a spiral, a message. At the center of the spiral was a single word. Soon, that night, Elias couldn't sleep. He sat outside under the twin moons, the crystal glowing in his palm. He thought about everything: the wars, the fear, the lies, and the one being who had changed everything simply by existing. Maybe humanity wasn't ready to meet her kind again yet, but when they were, she would return. And when that day came, he would be waiting. The wind picked up, carrying a faint hum, a melody he knew by heart, her song. Elias smiled, eyes reflecting the starlight. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "So will I." Far across the desert, unseen by human eyes, something stirred beneath the sands. A faint light pulsed in rhythm with his crystal, and in the quiet of the night, a voice echoed softly across the stars. "The bridge is waking. The seed awakens." The desert was no longer silent. At night, the sands began to hum, a deep, soft vibration that made the air itself shimmer. From orbit, the human satellites picked up strange energy pulses coming from the region once known as the Forbidden Zone, the same place where Captain Elias Ward had last been seen. Inside the outpost, soldiers whispered about ghosts. Lights flickered on and off without warning. Machines worked when disconnected from power, and sometimes they swore they saw shapes moving in the dunes, glowing faintly blue under the moons. Elias knew what it was. The seed, the thing she had left behind, was waking up. He spent every night monitoring the energy readings. Each day, the signal grew stronger. The spiral pattern he had traced earlier was now forming across miles of sand, visible from the sky as a faint, glowing network. It was alive, expanding, spreading like veins under the desert. It wasn't a weapon. It was life. Elias sent reports to command, but none of them were believed. His transmissions were labeled as signal contamination. His name still carried the mark of treason. No one wanted to hear that the so-called wild alien had created something beautiful. No one wanted to believe that peace could grow out of forbidden technology. But Elias knew the truth, and he knew she had trusted him for a reason. One morning, the horizon burned gold, and he saw something impossible. Small plants, crystalline and glowing, pushing through the red sand. They grew fast, curling upward like vines made of light. When he touched one, it pulsed gently. And in that pulse, he felt a heartbeat. Not his, not human. Hers. The crystal she had left him began to hum in response. A thin beam of light projected from it, pointing toward the open desert. He followed it. Hours later, he reached the center of the glowing spiral, a crater that had once been the ruins of the alien city. Now, it was a valley filled with living light. The air shimmered with floating dust that glittered like stars. At the center stood a structure, half-grown, half-built, a fusion of stone, crystal, and alien design. It was the heart of the seed. He approached slowly, his boots sinking in soft, glowing sand. The structure pulsed once, and the air filled with a familiar sound. Her voice, soft, clear, and endless. "You kept your promise," it said. Elias froze, looking around. There was no body, no figure, only light and sound. But the voice was her, alive. Every vibration in the air carried her tone, every spark of light her warmth. "I told you," he whispered, "I'd wait." The light rippled gently. "And I told you I'd return." From the dunes behind him, engines roared, human ships. Command had finally noticed the anomaly. They came armed, ready for battle. Elias stood tall between them and the glowing structure. He could already hear the radio orders crackling. "Target the source. Prepare to fire." His voice cut through the static, steady and calm. "If you fire," he said, "you'll kill the only thing that can save us." The officers ignored him. Missile locks engaged, targeting systems active. And then the ground trembled. The structure opened like a blooming flower, light spilling out in waves. The air filled with the song, the same melody that once stopped armies. This time, it wasn't just her voice. It was thousands. The sound wrapped around the ships, entering their systems, silencing their weapons. No explosions, no violence. Just stillness. Inside every pilot's mind, images appeared, memories of war, pain, destruction, and then visions of something else, unity, calm, light. The same dream she had carried, the one Elias had protected. The humans lowered their weapons, their voices quiet, their eyes wide with awe. They didn't understand what they were seeing, but for the first time, they didn't feel afraid. Elias fell to his knees, overwhelmed. He looked up at the glowing heart of the seed and whispered, "You did it." The light responded, pulsing softly. "We did it," her voice said, "together." As the ships retreated, the desert changed before his eyes. What was once barren began to bloom with radiant life, crystal plants, luminous water. The planet itself was healing. The seed was not just hers. It was his too, their shared creation. A living bridge between two worlds that once tried to destroy each other. He stayed there until the sun set, watching the valley breathe, knowing that something eternal had begun. And though her voice faded into the wind, he could still feel her presence all around him. Not gone, just transformed. When he looked up at the stars that night, he saw a faint blue glow moving across the heavens. And he smiled. She kept her word. He whispered, "She's watching." The return of the light. Years passed. The desert that was once lifeless had become a sea of light. Crystalline trees shimmered beneath twin suns, their roots humming with energy. Wind carried songs instead of sand, and where death once ruled, life had learned to breathe again. The place had a new name now. Humans called it the Bridge Valley. Pilgrims came from across the colonies to see it. They walked barefoot across glowing ground, whispering prayers not to gods, but to memory. The memory of her, the wild one, the alien girl no one wanted. The being who united two species through sacrifice and trust. Elias Ward had grown older, his hair silver, his uniform long gone. He lived in a small shelter near the first crystal tree. People called him the guardian of the bridge. He didn't care for titles. He only cared for the promise he had made. Each night he sat by the crystal heart she left behind. It still pulsed faintly, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. He would speak to it, as if she were still listening. Sometimes he swore he could hear her laugh, soft as the desert wind. Sometimes he would wake from dreams where she stood beside him, eyes glowing, voice gentle, saying, "Not yet, but soon." One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, the sky changed. A wave of blue light spread across the stars. Every crystal in the valley lit up at once. The air vibrated with a familiar hum, her song, stronger than ever before. Elias stood, heart pounding, tears in his eyes. "She's back," he whispered. He could feel it, deep in his bones. The bridge had awakened again. From the sky, streaks of light descended. Not ships, beings, luminous and graceful. They touched the ground silently, their forms shifting like living starlight. One stepped forward, her glow soft, familiar. When she spoke, the world seemed to pause. "Elias," she said, and though the voice came from light, he knew it instantly. It was her. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed. "I waited," he said, voice breaking. "I kept everything alive." She smiled, her face both alien and human, radiant and kind. "I know," she said. "You were the bridge that never broke." She reached out, and for the first time since that night long ago, her hand touched his. Warm, real, alive. The light from her body flowed into his. And suddenly, he saw everything. The galaxies she had crossed, the worlds she had healed, the lives that had learned from her memory. He saw humanity standing beside her kind, not as conquerors, but as equals. He saw children of both races playing under twin suns. No walls, no fear, only peace. When the vision faded, she looked at him one last time. "You've done enough," she whispered. "Rest now." He smiled, the weight of years falling from his shoulders. "Will I see you again?" he asked softly. Her eyes shimmered like starlight. "You always will," she said, "every time the wind sings." And with that, she placed her palm over his heart. A pulse of light spread outward. Elias closed his eyes, feeling warmth, peace, and endless calm. When the light faded, he was gone. Not dead, simply part of the world he had saved. The beings of light bowed their heads in silence. Then they rose into the sky, leaving trails that shimmered for days. The valley glowed brighter than ever. The people who came later said they could still hear his voice in the wind, whispering the same words he once spoke to her. "You kept your promise, and so did I." And far beyond the stars, where human eyes could not reach, two lights moved together across the void, one blue, one white, traveling side by side through eternity. A soldier and a wild girl, bound forever by hope, by love, and by the bridge they built between worlds.